That night, as we got ready for bed, my little sister started acting strange again. I was half awake when I heard her get up and start walking toward the door. I asked what she was doing, and she replied, "The lady is talking to me, the lady from the tree." Good evening, community. I thank you once again for letting us into your devices. I thank you for being brave enough to listen to the following stories. Believe me, they will show you that the paranormal is more real than you think, that the supernatural is much closer than you imagine. I'm going to ask you to stay calm and be mature while listening. Some stories will describe intense events, some violent. So, if there are children nearby, we recommend that they don't listen to this episode. There's no need. If you're easily influenced, or if you're currently experiencing what you believe is a paranormal phenomenon at home, it might also be better to skip this episode. And, well, if it's the latter, I wouldn't listen to anything that would bring more fear to that place, because they say these energies feed on fear. And, I try to stay skeptical, that I'm not an expert, but even so, I feel like it's a recommendation I should make to you. Once you've been warned, it's time to begin. You have one last chance to stop listening to this episode, because Relatos de la Noche is about to begin in 5, 4, 3, 2. This story is from a long, long time ago. My grandmother used to tell it to me, and it's from when she was very young, so just imagine. Since then, she believed her Uncle Seferino wasn't strange, but as he aged, he became weirder. He talked to himself and to the mountain. He rarely talked about his childhood, about the town where he was born, Ojo de Agua de la Palma, in Zacatecas. My grandmother went there once. She said that even back then the place was practically abandoned, with houses almost in ruins and dirt roads that looked just like the wilderness. One cloudy afternoon on my grandmother's birthday, her Uncle Seferino confessed to her that birthdays made him very sad. And looking around, making sure no one was listening, he told her why. When he was a child, he had a sister named Clarita. One early morning, he caught her talking to someone under her cot. You couldn't see anything down there because it was so dark. But he swore that after being awake for a little while, after paying attention to the silence, he started to hear voices, several of them, whispering at the same time, as if several throats were repeating the same words in unison. Driven by curiosity, he decided to spy on her every night. He tried to wake up whenever he heard her talking to herself, and always after a while, the voices would always start to answer. On one occasion, he heard her leave the house through the window and walk toward the outhouse. He went out after her and tried to watch from a distance. Clara didn't go into the outhouse. She went back toward the maguey plants, and that's when he knew something strange was going on. That's when he saw them. Small creatures, about the size of his rag dolls, with faces that looked like withered skin and little bony hands. They wore plain, peasant-like clothes and smiled with clenched teeth. Clara would offer them flowers, bread, even some of her toys, and they would receive everything with a solemn gesture, as if they were offerings. Seferino ran back to his bed and hid there, scared to death. After a few days, Clara told him that they wouldn't see each other anymore, that they wouldn't see each other for a long time. She asked him not to cry and not to tell anyone, that he just had to trust that they would meet again. That same night, Seferino saw her go down to the yard and disappear among the agave plants, and Clarita never came back. That was the reason why his family left the village, because of the sadness of losing Clara. But what made him really sad was his sister's promise that they would see each other again. He thought that maybe that's why she would come back, that the creatures would bring her back to look for him, and that she would only find an empty house. After telling this to my grandma, poor Uncle Seferino started to cry and then went out to walk alone. He was always sad, but it became increasingly obvious. They looked for him in his room one day, but he was gone. When they started looking for him around town, someone said he left very early, saying he was going to find someone to take him to Ojo de Agua de Palma, his hometown, where he was born. They went looking for him all the way there, to the ruins of his house. Fresh footprints in the soft earth vanished among the agave plants, as if someone, likely Seferino, had just been there. You could feel his presence, but no one saw him leave. No one saw him enter or leave that town. My grandmother's younger brother, who was also there looking for him, later told her that when they were in that house, he heard Uncle Seferino talking and laughing. He didn't see him, but he could hear him as if he was heading into the woods. They never saw him again. Good evening, everyone. Before I start, I want to tell you something. As much as I trust this community, because I trust this community with my life, I've been listening to night stories for several years, and it was very important to me during a difficult time in college. It helped me feel accompanied on nights when I couldn't sleep and when I felt completely alone. And I think that's what encourages me to tell you this, because it's something that happened to me and my family several years ago here in Jalisco. It all started because my dad wanted to take us to see the ranch where he grew up. They had left there many years ago when he was a child. The house hadn't been theirs for years. Someone bought it and made it their country home. He wanted us to see it and understand what his childhood was like. I'm not sure how he contacted the new owner or why he wanted to rent from him, but when he told him why he wanted to take his family, the man gave him permission to spend the weekend there for free. After all, the house was empty. At that time, I must have been about 9 or 10 years old. It was my dad, my mom, me, and my little sister, who had just turned 3 years old. She kept moving and wouldn't stay still. I remember leaving Guadalajara early when it was still cool, and the road seemed endless. I usually got car sick and threw up, but that time I managed not to. And it's because my dad was really happy, like excited, like he was a kid. He was telling us about how things used to be, all around there, about the harvests, about the little animals he used to take care of. He really missed life in the countryside. As we kept going down the road, you could see how the landscape changed. The air even felt drier, the roads got narrower, and the ground kicked up red dust with every car that passed by. When we arrived at the ranch, my dad stood silently, taking everything in. I couldn't tell if he was sad or happy. I'd never seen that expression on his face before. The house was still standing, but they had painted it a different color, the windows were different, and they had even put up some walls that weren't there before. They had added a very nice porch to it. Still, to him, it was his little house. He showed us where the animal pen was, the yard where he played with his siblings, and the well where they got water. While we listened to him, I felt everything was filled with unseen memories, as if you could still feel the life that place once had. I could almost see him running around. Being a boy my age, I wondered if I would like him at that age, my dad at my age, and I got lost in those thoughts, imagining him being my friend when we were kids. But something strange happened. Since we arrived, I noticed that my little sister seemed confused. She walked with us, but she looked distracted, as if she was listening to someone else. At first, I didn't think much of it. You know how little kids are. They get distracted by anything. But then during lunch, it really threw me off. We were sitting on a bench next to the main house when I saw her raising her hand, waving hello. "Who are you waving at?" I asked her. And she, very serious, pointed toward a big tree that was a few meters away. My dad turned around immediately, took her by the hand, and pulled her over to where the rest of us were. He stayed silent, but his expression changed. Afterward, he kept talking as if nothing happened, but I noticed he couldn't stop staring at the tree. In the afternoon, we kept walking around the ranch and my dad told us more about his childhood. He looked happy, although sometimes he seemed to fade, as if the memories also hurt, as if arriving there brought them all back to him, not just the happy ones. That night, as we went to sleep, my little sister started acting strange again. I was half awake when I heard her get up and start walking toward the door. I asked what she was doing, and she replied, "The lady from the tree is talking to me." At that moment, my dad got up faster than me, picked her up, and told us it was time to return to Guadalajara because he didn't want us to stay there overnight. My mom obviously protested because it was already late because the road was long, but he was determined. "Let's go now," he repeated angrily. And when we heard that tone, we knew we had to obey, so we did. The way back was silent. I looked out the window at the distant lights of the small towns, the shadows of the hills. No one spoke. After a little while, my little sister fell asleep. Only then did my dad, without looking away from the road, start talking to us. He told us that when he and his brothers were kids, they also saw a woman hanging from that tree, that she didn't always let herself be seen completely. Sometimes she was just a shadow, sometimes only her silhouette swinging. But sometimes she would speak to them in a low voice, calling each one by their name. Initially, they thought it was a dream, but after talking, they realized they'd all seen the same thing. Their grandmother, my great-grandmother, whom I never met, explained to them back then that long before that house existed, when everything was just wilderness, the people from the town had hanged a witch there. They said that she still appeared to call the children to come closer to the tree. I listened to all of that with goosebumps, glancing sideways at my little sister, who slept peacefully, unaware of anything. My dad said that when he saw her waving by the tree, everything came rushing back. He realized it wasn't over. That's why he decided we should leave right away and not risk something worse happening. We never went back to that ranch. I once passed through that town, just recently, and it was impossible not to remember it. The good thing is my sister doesn't remember anything now. If I think about what she saw, it really scares me. It scares me to imagine a woman hanging there, calling out to the children. Community, thank you for making it this far, and thank you for continuing to share this project, for helping us with your comments, with your thumbs up, with your 5-star ratings, with everything you do, no matter which platform you listen to us on. That helps us more than you can imagine. We've reached so many people and are now the most listened to Spanish language podcast worldwide. Only thanks to you. Thanks to word of mouth, to the fact that you haven't gotten tired of recommending this space. You know that we practically don't do collaborations, and that's because of my social anxiety, which is a big part of who I am. So all the growth we have is solely thanks to you. We're going to leave a link in the description of this episode so you can follow us on social media, find the book, and send us your story. Everything is over there, and without further ado, let's move on to the next story. A long story tonight. Be very careful with school legends. According to the next story, some of them might be true. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ilsa R., and before I start, I want to clarify this story isn't made up or exaggerated. Yes, it sounds unbelievable, and yes, I wish it were exaggerated. This happened when I was in middle school at a Catholic school run by nuns in Mexico City. I won't say the name, since it still exists, is famous, and several people involved are still around living their lives. All I'll say is the campus has a large courtyard and an even bigger tree. I think it's an ash tree, but not sure. Sometimes in the spring, it would release a kind of dust that stuck to your clothes, and we would complain because the blue skirt would get covered in little dots. The tree stood at the center, its roots breaking through the ground beside a concrete bench. The bench was always occupied, not just for its coolness, but because it was the popular crowd's favorite spot. Since first grade, there was a rumor. They said that if you approached the tree after sunset and recited a certain prayer forwards and backwards 3 times, something would happen. Some people said a woman appeared. A girl claimed you would hear your name whispered in your ear. There were many versions, but we all ended up hearing at least one of them. The prayer was the only constant. I'm not going to write or say it seriously. I don't want any girl from school or anywhere else to hear it and start pretending to be brave, you know? And if you know it, please don't do it. Secondly, I had a very close friend, Valeria. We were the kind who always stayed to rehearse when the school festivals came around. We had a really bad play, one of those they do for special occasions, and they asked us to stay several afternoons in a row to go over our lines. That first afternoon we got together in teams. We were already tired, laughing our heads off, because one classmate would say "Mom" as if she were an announcer. And when they finally let us go, Valeria told me, "Hey, what if we tried today?" And I knew what she meant. I told her no, that it was better not to, that maybe that ritual had less to do with Bloody Mary and more to do with playing with the Ouija board, more like something real. Why were we bringing things into the yard, the school, and this plane, as if math wasn't enough already? She pulled out a small notebook and showed me something written in pencil. "Look, I just wrote it down to practice," she said. "I have it written correctly, and I already wrote it backwards and with marks, so I don't make a mistake." Until then, I hadn't seen the prayer. I don't know who gave it to her. Maybe it was passed down for generations. The legend existed long before we were born, clearly. Reading it gave me a strange feeling, like when you remember something you shouldn't remember, something you had forgotten on purpose. It wasn't a complicated sentence. It was short. It sounded like those things you say without thinking, like a Catholic prayer. But at the same time, it wasn't. Simultaneously, it felt sacrilegious, especially when said backwards. We didn't do that ritual. It was my mom who did it for us. And that's it. We went to drop Valeria off at her house, and I thought that idea had stayed there. But the next day, again with rehearsals, we stayed late. Later. This time the nuns left one by one until there were none left at the school. The sister who watched the gate urged us to hurry, saying they were about to close and only a few teams remained. The sun had already set a long time ago, but the courtyard still held some warmth. Valeria signaled to me she was carrying the notebook. We walked to the bench by the tree. I was already shaking with nerves, but also with an uneasy excitement, the kind you get when you know you're doing something wrong, but you think nothing's going to happen. We sat down on the bench. Valeria began quietly reciting part of the prayer backwards, carefully breaking up the syllables. I followed her with my fingers so we wouldn't get lost, and we were about to try it when 2 girls from 3rd year came up to us. Paula and Belen were very good friends with one of Valeria's cousins or something like that. They acted like adults and sized you up. "Why are you on our bench?" asked Paula with a smile, as if she had caught us doing something wrong. Nothing, Valeria said, hiding the notebook. Nothing? Let's see what you've got there. Ah, I know what you're going to do. You'll do the tree prayer. Let's see. Do it if you dare. We already did it last year. Or are you scared? I was going to say yes, that we were scared, that we were leaving, but something inside me made me stay quiet. I'm not sure why. Maybe at that age, you just don't want to seem like a coward. Paula sat next to me and pulled me by the shoulder as if to get me closer to the trunk. I jumped up. Valeria, on the other hand, didn't move. She was always calmer, braver. Paula said, "You must do it 3 times, both forwards and backwards. If you mess up, it won't work." "Did you guys do it?" I asked. "Of course," Belen replied. "They told me my name." Paula says she felt like someone stood behind her. Let's see. Don't you want to check if it's true? I thought, okay, we'll say it wrong once, quietly, just so they'll leave us alone. Valeria looked at me as if asking me to leave, but Paula was already counting. 1, 2. This is where I lost my brave face. When she said 3, I ran, got up, turned around, and almost tripped as I left. I wasn't embarrassed or concerned. I felt that if I stayed on that bench any longer, something would happen to me. I just knew it. I felt it with a certainty that, if I think about it, I haven't felt for anything else. I heard that Paula said, "Oh, how dramatic," and that Belen laughed at me, but I left. I hid near the gate behind a wall where they kept the water jugs. My hands were shaking and my stomach hurt a little. I could see the yard from there. They remained by the tree. Valeria didn't get up. Paula had the notebook. I saw her placing her finger so she wouldn't lose her place. I didn't hear the prayer because I was already far away, because there was noise in the street, but it was clear they were repeating it. First the right side, then the wrong. Paula spoke with a firm voice. Belen imitated her. Valeria closed her eyes and just moved her lips. Nothing more, but she would stop as if she regretted it. I noticed because I know her. Well, I knew her. When they finished, they stood up quickly, as if wanting to end the scene immediately. Valeria didn't look at me. Paula and Belen did, but said nothing. Sensing one sister heading to the patio, I instinctively moved toward the door to avoid attention. I don't know when I lost sight of Valeria, but a few minutes later, I got a message. "Wait for me at the door, please." I peeked out and saw her walking over looking pale. "What happened?" I asked her. "No, not here," she told me. "I'll tell you later. Can I come to your house today?" Of course I accepted. We got into my mom's car as soon as she arrived, and half an hour later we were already in my room, but she was still the same. I gave her water, but she wouldn't sit and kept pacing while holding her forehead. I asked her if something hurt, if she wanted to talk to my mom, or if we should take her to the doctor, but she just shook her head. I don't know why, she finally told me. But in my head, I heard that something was going to be waiting for me at my house today. I don't want to go. Can I stay here tonight? She slept in my bed while I used the air mattress we once gave my cousin. No one slept well that night. It wasn't because of noises or apparitions or anything like that. It was because of the idea, the possibility that there was someone really watching over her in her room. I think it must be horrible to be afraid to go to your own house. The next day we showed up at school exhausted. Paula and Belen were missing from the courtyard and their first class. I mainly wanted to see them to confirm my friend was just imagining things. But during recess, the rumors started. Paula had arrived at school with her parents, her face covered with a sweatshirt, and they had gone straight to the principal's office. Some said Paula fainted that night. Others said it was an anxiety attack, that was all. I didn't want to go to the office, but Valeria did, so we went. And there was Paula, her face covered in scratches. Some were superficial, others looked bad, very deep, as if someone had really gone after her, especially her cheekbones, her neck. Paula lowered her face when she walked past us. She didn't say anything to us. Her parents took her away. Then, one of the secretaries, the one who was always nosy, went up to another teacher, and without realizing we were still behind her, pretending to wait for someone on the couch, she said, "Paula's going to be absent for a week. Her parents say she locked herself in her room last night, screaming someone else was inside and asking for help. Her dad broke the lock, but there was no one there, no one. But the girl was acting crazy, and she swears she didn't scratch herself. The mom says she initially heard someone else inside, but when they opened the door, they saw there wasn't. They assumed it was Paula having a hysterical episode and speaking in another voice." "What if someone else actually escaped through the window? A boyfriend or friend?" asked the teacher. "No, they have bars on the window," answered the secretary. The parents emphasized that there was no way anyone could have entered or left except through the door. Beelan didn't show up all week, nor the following one. On the third week, we found out from Valeria's cousin that she was in the hospital, that apparently she had jumped off the roof of her 2-story house. Still, no one thought she was trying to harm herself. They said it was because she was escaping from something, that something was up there with her. I swear to you, she never came back to school. I don't know if she changed schools or moved to another city, but we never saw her again. Who knows if she was expelled or if she left on her own? Over time, Valeria told me that during that prayer, during the invocation, she would go silent. Sometimes she would only repeat parts, say it quietly, and then pretend to cough or act like she made a mistake. She told me with embarrassment, like someone confessing they cheated, but I hugged her. To me, it felt more like survival instinct than cheating. We thought the worst was over, but it wasn't. The rest started with small things. Valeria texted me in the afternoon. "I'm at the mall with my mom, and there's someone dressed in black near us, like a nun standing on the other side of the hallway. She's not one of the sisters from school. She's always following me, but always at the same distance. The next day is Sunday," she told me. "We visited Chapultepec with my uncle and cousin. I felt like someone was walking behind me. I turned around and saw the same nun again, just as far away. When I looked again, she was gone, but then I saw her again among the trees." One more message. "Now I saw her at the corner of my street, standing as if waiting to cross, about 40 or 50 meters away from me. As always, never any closer, but never any farther either. I feel like she couldn't get any closer. She positions herself so I notice her but keeps some distance. I always told her that it could be her issue, that she shouldn't hold on to that, and she would tell me, yes, that may be. But when we were in person, she would tremble every time she talked to me about that nun. She never got any closer, never. That's what's strange. She didn't approach, didn't speak, didn't signal. She was just there. Sometimes it seemed like she would lift her head as if she was watching where Valeria was, but nothing else. Other than that, it seemed like the nun couldn't even move. The habit wasn't like our sisters. It was older. I can't really explain it. We didn't have the vocabulary to distinguish fabrics or cuts, and we weren't experts on nuns either. But I knew it was different. Time passed. We finished high school and went to different prep schools. I stopped seeing Valeria every day. We were still in touch, but not with the same intensity as in school. She told me that little by little she stopped seeing the nun, that maybe she finally left her alone. I think she wanted to believe it too. In high school, I once invited her to a party with my friends. Middle school came up because a classmate was there. Eventually, the legend and invocation were mentioned in conversation. We were with new friends, sharing stories about the craziest things we did in middle school. And I opened my mouth to say once at my school there was a tree and Valeria and I. But Valeria looked straight at me with a face I had never seen on her before. Without moving her head, just with her eyes, she told me no. It was as if she said, "Don't bring it up again, please. Leave it there." So I just lowered my voice and changed the subject. I talked about something else unimportant. No one insisted. Maybe by staying silent, I made sure that would never happen again. I never saw Paula or Belen again, as I mentioned. At university, I met someone who said they had met Belen, and they assured me that she had been hospitalized in a psychiatric facility because of a very severe nervous breakdown. But they said it with that tone of someone who's not sure about what they heard, like someone telling you gossip without knowing if it's true or not. And nobody heard anything else. Years later, I walked past my middle school, my old middle school. I was in a taxi. I got off at the corner to buy some chips. Like always when I went out of nostalgia and by reflex, I glanced over at the schoolyard. The tree was still there, bigger, as if time had rewarded it for its patience. I felt like going in to make sure they didn't know the legend, and if they did, that they wouldn't go around repeating things they don't understand. That courage isn't about enduring a big prank, that if something inside tells them to run, they have to run. Like me, maybe I was a coward, but I don't care. If I was, that's what saved me. I don't know exactly what happened that afternoon or if someone or something approached Paula and whispered in her ear. I'm not sure what Belen saw on her ceiling or who walked behind Valeria all those months. I know this. You have to respect those words. You have to respect the prayers and the invocations above all, even if they seem like games. It's clear that many of them are not, and in certain places I feel like there are things waiting for something to give them permission to come in. If there are girls from my school listening to this and you already recognize the legend I'm talking about, don't get the prayer. And if you have it, don't say it, don't look for it. I'm not going to share it, even though I remember it well, and I ask you, Uriel, to make sure that no one does it in the comments. Some people, without realizing it or having experienced it, would do anything to become the protagonist of their own night story. And if someone like me knows the story by heart, delete it. Or even better, stay away. Stay away from anything you feel might lead you to experience something truly paranormal. It's not at all as fun as you might imagine. That's all. Thank you for listening to me. I know there are more spectacular stories, and maybe mine doesn't have scary ghosts or doors slamming or really important things happening. It only has words, just words, like an invocation. If you ever pass by a nun's school in Mexico City, if you recognize a tree in the center, if you recognize the school from this story, don't try to be brave, please, no matter what others tell you. Even if someone promises nothing will happen, I swear it does. Sometimes something will respond and we don't always have the strength to handle it.